Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today, we will be working on the M728 CEV. I like this vehicle. It's very fun, to me at least. However, I really wouldn't recommend it in survival. It's kind of hard to upkeep, but I mean, if you're watching this video, you want to build it in survival. So, with that out the way, let's get started. As per usual, make sure you have a stand and some building repairs set up so that way you can just project it onto the stand and start printing. Alrighty, with that done, the next thing we are going to work on is the little driver port things right here. So to work on these is pretty simple. You're just going to add the fixed periscope front, like so. You'll know if you're hovering over the rotor or not because it will be slightly canted. Sometimes you may need to unlock the rotor, as I'm not too sure why the rotor moves on its own despite being locked, but it happens. So sometimes you might need to unlock it. Anyways, next is the turret. We'll extend that rotor all the way out just so that way nothing catches on these blocks down here. Then we'll switch over to our conveyor junction. This is where the ammo is going to connect to the chassis. So you'll be able to load ammo into the turret and the chassis through the port on the back. Next, we are going to do a projector. The reason why we are putting the projector here and not down here is because a projector can only print onto the same grid the projector is on. So we're going to take our projector, oh, I'm in inventory. I'm going to take our projector, go to blueprints. You can either make a blueprint yourself or go to the Steam page. I should have it linked down below where you can access the turret. Oh. Okay. Definitely make sure to remember to turn off your build and repairs. Okay. It's okay, it's just a little oopsie. That's all. We'll simply delete that. And then now we'll move the turret down to where it needs to go. Once your ammo boxes are lined up with that conveyor junction, now you can turn on the building repairs. Okay, now that your turret's done, the next thing we are going to work on is the commander's gun. So first we're going to come here, make sure that that rotor is all the way out, so that way once again you have more room to work with and nothing gets caught up. Then we are going to take a curved armored conveyor and a hinge to start with, followed by a conveyor pipe and the 50 cal. This one specifically I feel works best. Next we're going to work on the main body, which is just a little 2x2, followed by slopes on 3 of the 4 sides. We are going to leave that front side alone for a short bit. Then we're going to follow that up on the bottom with half blocks. So same thing as before, slopes. Fill out the corners. And there we go. Next thing we're going to work on is the front. So we need a 2x1 base here, followed by a half corner. And then we're going to put a half corner underneath as well. However, for this we are going to need a transitional block, which is the slope transition tip, like so. And then for here, what we're going to put is the half slope inverted, and then we'll put a normal heavy armor slope at the bottom. And then you can just fill out this corner like normal. You can fill out the bottom if you want to. In my experience, it doesn't really make all that big a difference, as this is just a fairly weak part of the tank, and if they're going for it specifically, especially with the main cannon round, you can pretty much guarantee they're just gonna rip right through it 90% of the time. But I mean, it is what it is. It's your tank at the end of the day. Put a 2x2 cupola on top like so. Next, we're going to put a fixed periscope back on both this part and this part. Make sure for this one you're replacing it specifically on this pipe right here and not directly on the hinge. And this periscope right here is actually so we can somewhat seamlessly attach this infrared night vision camera. It's not perfect, but at least with this, you know, it's not just floating there. If I could find a better way to attach that, or like a better camera, I would, but I personally really like having the infrared night vision camera on there because you can search for targets with the commander's cupola. But with that small rant out of the way, the next thing we're going to start on is the gun. So first things first, we are going to put a armored conveyor tube here. Now you can also just use like a normal conveyor tube if you want, because to be honest, if something, I'll be honest, if something is ripping through the front and gets to this, chances are it's gonna break that hinge right there. This mostly is to kind of protect from the side. I mean, yeah. I'll be real with you. With a lot of these components, if they get hit like straight up, they're just gonna straight break from most cannons. Most high-powered cannons, especially if they're using APFSDS, it's just gonna straight up break it. But there's no harm in adding just a little bit extra protection, because you never know. Sorry, I'm yapping a little bit, but just to make sure that that is in the right spot, we are going to hop in real quick. That hinge should be called elevation, which it is. And then we are just going to make sure it's properly attached, which it is. Oh, and something I should mention as well, it is pretty important that you use the curved tubes that are right up against the block, because if you don't, it kind of leaves like not much room to like get to this seat right here. And it looks like it didn't print out a seat right here either, because there should be the commander's seat right here, so we'll put that back. But yeah, a little bit of a pain. So for the mantlet, we'll start right behind the end of the muzzle, or not muzzle brake, but a fume extractor right there. Then we're gonna put slopes on both the top and bottom side. And then we're gonna finish the top slope first. So we're just gonna invert that little slope right there. And then we're going to finish it with half slopes. Like so. Then for the bottom is a bit different because you need room to let this stuff move. So what we are actually going to do is we are going to press F7 to bring our camera to our character, and then we're going to press F8. And F8 will allow you to free cam, and you can still play stuff, and you can still turn lights on and off while in this mode. So we are going to use this cam to get behind here and place 3 half slopes facing that way, and then 2 half slopes on each side like this. The reason why we don't place a half slope in the middle is because of the conveyor feeding system right here that feeds the main cannon. So that is a weak spot. Once we recess the turret again, it won't be so obvious. But just keep that in mind whenever you're fighting with someone, especially up close. Try not to make that weak spot obvious if you can. Once we're done with that, we are going to place the sight, which the sight goes on the left side if you're staring at the mantlet, but it's the right side of the tank if you're talking about the direction the gun is facing. Make sure it's the class 0 gun sight regular, by the way. I find that one to be the best for trying to gauge where to shoot. So we'll place the 50 cal M2 Browning rescaled embedded in the left side right here, right side while we're staring at it, but it's the left side of the mantlet. In case you're wondering, yes, this is not fed, so you do need to manually open this up and reload it once you run out of ammo, but I believe it can hold 2 boxes of ammunition before needing to reload. It's either 2 or 3. But last thing we are going to do is add the little cover, which I'll be honest with you guys, the cover can be kind of finicky. I have found that the gun operates a lot smoother without this cover. But I do prefer the cover because it kind of obscures the obvious weak spot from the top down. But you're just going to go ahead and build it, because I assume people want to know how to build the whole tank. So to build this little cover, we are going to need a centered flat hinge. Make sure it's the minimal flat hinge. Or, excuse me, it doesn't need, not centered flat hinge. It needs to be the just normal minimal flat hinge. We're going to increase the angle a little bit so that way we don't have to worry about it colliding with anything. Then we are going to grab some 50mm plates. Now, it's the plates, the 50mm plates, that need to be centered. Just 2 full plates, like so. That should be more than enough. And then centered half plates on the back here. Make sure you set a limit to how far it can travel, because I will say if you don't, and you reduce the torque to 0, you can pretty much guarantee that at some point it's going to fall into that little crevice. And that's obviously not good, because then you can't really elevate without clanging out. And the reason why we can't make this longer is because if you make it any longer, when you elevate, that's going to start colliding with some of this stuff. So it's best just to set a limit and then set the torque to 0 so it can freely move. And that is the mantlet for our vehicle done. The last thing for the turret is going to be the crane. Now, this is a little, it seems difficult, but trust me, the crane is not difficult. It's pretty simple once you really look at it. So we are going to place a column here. We're going to follow this up with a normal conveyor piece, followed by 2 columns, then 2 pistons. If I can find them, I probably passed them. Excuse me. Yeah, I did. They were literally in the same hotbar. Followed by 2 pistons. These are optional, by the way, but I like having these because just a little bit of extension. A little side note is that I'm actually going to rework this vehicle. I'm probably going to redo the turret at some point. And I'm actually messing around with the harpoon mod, and I'll probably give the crane the harpoon gun, so that way you don't have to worry about like the extra extension and stuff and more parts to break. But anyway, I digress. You're going to want 5 column pieces after the piston pieces. Then you're going to want a T-junction and a hinge. And then the other side is literally the exact same thing. It's just, you know, column, curved piece, 2 column pieces, 2 pistons, 5 column pieces, T-junction, hinge, like so. Then for this, it doesn't matter how many are on each side, just make sure they're like, you know, close together. And as you can see, we have quite a significant gap here, and this will cause stress over time, as this gap, like, if you merge this together, it'll try and pull it together while the rotors are pushing it apart, which is not good. You don't want built up tension like that, because it can cause really just unusual behavior, and most importantly, it can kind of cause the turret to passively shake, which is no good, because if the turret's just passively shaking, then it can make it an already difficult, mind you, gun to aim even more difficult. So we want to try and eliminate any sources of tension in the build. So you're going to want to place a merge block on both of the sides. Once it turns from yellow to green, you know it's connected, and you can just delete these. And now that these are conjoined, we can move on to the rest of the crane. So we actually want 5 blocks on each side, followed by hinges on both sides again. And then for this part, it differs a little bit. So we are going to put a normal block, followed by an HVSS bogey wheel. And then we're going to put a normal block on this side as well. Now, I have found that about 35 degrees, you know, either positive or negative, depending on how you place the hinges. But I found that about 35 degrees works well for this. Actually, something I might something I might mention as well is I wouldn't recommend putting limits on this until everything's hooked up. So once again, you allow things to move freely until they're connected and they're at their final resting spots. That way there's no tension. Here, typically about 55 degrees gets it pretty even. It's typically around 54.5 to 55. As you can see, it's not perfect. I'm sure there's some math I could do to get this figured out proper, but I'm not really going to worry about that. I'll probably do that once I revamp this vehicle, as it's not final, but we'll see. So on one side, we are going to reduce the torque to 0, so that way we know that it has reached a resting spot it liked. You can see it is kind of lopsided a little bit, but for the sake of time, we're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to place a hinge on the back right there. Then we're going to follow that up with 2 more pistons, followed by a rotor, followed by a magnet. We're going to name these pistons piston boom, you can name them both the same thing, it's fine, it's not going to mess up anything. And then we're just gonna name that rotor wrist and hinge wrist. And then that is the crane pretty much complete. You can either name those individually, or what you can do is you can just access a point, type in piston. These 4 pistons right here are gonna be your extension pistons, so you can just name them piston extension, Control C, Control V, and just rename them like that. Way quicker than naming them individually. Hello everybody, Post Noodle here. Something that I forgot to include, and I only realized this after recording, is I forgot to add the little loops on the side. So just to show you how they're made, all it is just straight black neon tubes down is what the block is called. And you just place them side by side like this. It's nothing too difficult, but I figured I should add them before people get upset that I forgot something. So yeah, just place them side by side like so. And yeah, that's it. Post Noodle out. So with that out the way, what we can start now is programming. So before we mess with the crane, let's make sure our gun and stuff is working. So we're gonna type in Mart. The programmable block recognizes anything that's within this group here. So we've got to make sure we have the essentials in this group. So make sure your azimuth, which is your horizontal traverse, make sure that is in the group. Make sure your elevation, which obviously is your vertical traverse, is in the group. Make sure your sight is in the group. Make sure your gun is in the group. You can optionally have your 50 cal in the group if you'd like. And I do believe that that is it. Let's see. Click save. And might I mention, in case you don't already know, when you're when you want to add something to a group, you don't have to delete the group and then go back and add stuff. What you can do is, as I just did, you just click on the group and then you can shift click to highlight more items to add to it if you want to. And that's the easiest way to do that. But anyway, then we'll go to this block. You can see that we don't have any errors, so that means it should be operating just fine. So something I should mention as well is any seat that you want to operate this turret block, or this turret rather, you need to have highlighted. So let's double check, make sure our gunner seat is highlighted, which it is. These tanks are made so that way you can solo it or you can multi-crew. Here I have the gunner seat able to control it, and I have the driver's seat able to control it. The driver's seat is kind of finicky because, I mean, there's just not really a whole bunch of room for you to get out, so a lot of times it's going to boot you underneath the tank, but the bright side is that typically it's going to boot you underneath right here, so you'll actually have the protection of the dozer that's in front, so you won't just immediately get lit up and die. But now that that's done, we can check our PBs, go to crane. So as you can see, there's a couple of issues. We've misspelt or like mistyped what the game recognizes as that hinge. You can sorry, it's 4 a.m. where I'm at right now. You can of course change it. However, what I like to do, just to make sure that there's no like wonky stuff, is I just Control C the name, go to the rotor or whatever needs to be changed, and Control V. And I find that to be the most reliable way to change the name without having it be all super picky and frustrating. Because sometimes, like, even though the name is literally exactly the same, it just will not recognize it, and it can be very frustrating. So copy and pasting the name directly from the programmable block, I find, is the best way to do it. For this is actually a group, so we need to go back to the piston boom. We're gonna click on one, control click the other, and then we're just gonna copy paste that group name, save it, go back to the crane. Oh, we don't have it on. Okay. Had a little hiccup there, but it seems that we're doing all right now. So you can see that these rotors are being a little bouncy. However, what we can do to fix that is we can just up the torque. Do keep in mind that this rotor is not programmed into the thing to move by default. I will probably change this with the next iteration of this vehicle, as when I built this, I did not think that I could cohesively put two rotors together without issue. However, I have recently figured out that that is not the case. Oh, you know what? Yep, rotor lock. My apologies, guys. That was very goofy of me. Wow, that is bouncing. Give this one a little torque. So in case you don't know, bringing your mouse up is actually going to move your... Let me reposition. Bringing the mouse up is actually going to pull your crane back, and bringing the mouse down will pull your crane forward. Now, keep in mind, if you absolutely want to, you can honestly change all these variables yourself to something that suits you more. This is just kind of what I felt was best at the time. That is the crane done and the gun done. So next thing we should work on is the rest of the programmable blocks. So we are going to look for this one, simple turret. All right. Grab simple turret, group it as simple turret, save. Run refresh, and that should put it up on screen. Yes. Although it does seem that there's a small issue with it. However, that is most likely because it's on the stand. It's kind of wigging out. So this one, the one that shows you like all your ammo, I've had issue after issue after issue after issue with this script. It never wants to run consistently, and every time I've tried to implement it into a different vehicle, it's had an issue. If you can figure out what goes on with it, then be my guest. I would actually love if you could type into the comments exactly what goes wrong. But I tell it to look for specifically ammo on all the crates and put it specifically on the LCD ammo screen, which is this one right here. And it looks like we actually got off easy this time and it's working properly. However, every other time I've tried to put this onto a different vehicle, it doesn't seem to want to work properly. I might try again at some point, but what I moved on to is using Izzy's inventory management script. But I'll be honest with you, I prefer like the visual, like seeing how many shells you have left, but it's up to you if you want to go through the hassle of trying to like get this set up for other vehicles or not. That means the only thing we have left would be our turret blocks, which I'm sure most of you know how turret blocks go, but for those of you that might be new, just now checking out the game, I'll make it easy for you. So when you're using a turret block, it's simple azimuth, again, horizontal traverse. Elevation is your vertical traverse. You need to assign a camera. Well, technically, you don't have to, but if you want to personally use that turret, you need a camera. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see what you're shooting at. So this is simply named azimuth. And then for the camera, since this is the main gun, we are going to use the Class 0 gun sight camera regular. Then everything else should be normal. Yep. It'll put you into this screen right here, and then you can aim around your turret. For the side turret, it's the same, just different named parts. We're going to put in side ASI. Followed by the hinge that we forgot to name. I'll just put side in front of it, side hinge. And then side hinge, blur camera, and there you go. That is your commander's thing done. And just so you know, this door right here is not simply like collisionless. If you have the door up, it absolutely will block your commander's gun from traversing a full 360. So definitely recommend remembering to put that down. And okay, last but not least is the track. So the tracks sometimes bug out, and I'm sure you probably tried to like put one on there, and it probably gave you something along the lines of track is in waiting or waiting to be placed or something like that. Simply press R, I believe it is. It'll give you the prompt to remove the track. Yep, R to remove the track. And then that's all you've got to do for that track. And then place a new track on there. The new track, I find, actually won't spawn immediately as well. However, it does actually spawn eventually compared to the other one that just never appears. And then, once you're done with that, we're going to work on the dozer, which the dozer's pretty easy. It's nothing super complicated. So we're actually going to use half blocks. Gonna go across like so. We're going to put merge blocks on top, and that's how we're going to put them together. Now that they're together, I'm actually going to drop the torque on that so that way there's no stress. And then we're going to go all the way out here. Next, we're going to take the 2x1 base. And this is going on both sides. If I can spin it right, there we go. Then we're going to take a plate. It doesn't really matter what kind of plate. I just use the 50mm by default when I'm operating, like, well, not operating, but building heavy armor vehicles. And then I normally put a little 2x1 base at the bottom here. And then for one last final little detail, I give it just a little bit more edge. Like so. And there you go. Pretty simple, pretty easy. But just to make sure we haven't missed anything or messed up anywhere, we are going to cut this off, quickly copy it, and take it out here. And yep, there we go. Once we got it off the stand, it gave us our tracks back. Oh, yeah. Definitely would recommend turning off the crane PD while you're working. Or while you're driving normally. So that way that's not doing all sorts of crazy stuff, but... Neutral steering's working fine. elevation's working fine. So you can see it gets caught a little bit. I think that's actually due to the bottom piece there getting caught. But yeah, it appears that we are all done. Little testing. Shoots fine. Beautiful. This works fine. Crane, we already know works fine. Oh, one last thing before I go. Remember to take your rotors and reduce them back to where they need to go. The commander's cupola was -28 centimeters up, in case you were wondering, and the main rotor here was -33 centimeters above the bottom. Oh, and who can forget, you also need a connector right here. And one last thing, you actually can access the gun from here. So you can manually load, you can grab from here and manually load it from the loader seat here. I do not believe, oh, you actually can. Okay, so you can actually do that from the gunner seat as well. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'll work on making these videos a bit more professional as I go on, but it's definitely been difficult keeping them consistent. But if you liked it and enjoyed it and this helped you out with building it, feel free to leave a comment. If there's anything I can improve on, just let me know. And yeah, enjoy your day and enjoy this vehicle that I've made. Thank you.